What is going on, bodyslam.net YouTube channel, and welcome to the Royal Rumble post-show edition of the PipeBomb Wrestling Podcast, a show that is for the fans, by the fans, and as you can see by watching right now, we have a loaded panel for you. I am your phenomenal host, Mr. Podcasting Chris Belcher. Joining me, as always, is the Young Buck, Mr. Andy York. Also with us is our good friend, Mr. Adam Williamson, and then as promised, my dad, Billy Belcher, is in the house talking all things Royal Rumble, but it's not just us four. When I said loaded panel, I wasn't kidding. I also promised you at least one more guest, and he has delivered on that promise. Ladies and gentlemen, the whole podcasting show, Mr. Old School, Jared Justice, is in the house. Jared, what's up, man? How's it going?
Man, I'm pumped. That was a good show. I'm ready to talk about it.
Oh, man, let's get right to it. But before we do, we're going to welcome one more special guest from bodyslam.net. He does several things for the channel. He hosts several shows, and we had to get him on. I got a message earlier that said, hey, bring this guy on the show, and we are going to welcome Throwback to the show. Welcome to the show, man. How's it going?
What's good, guys? How you doing?
Hey, man, we are doing good.
Hey, at least you're not in Massachusetts right now. We had like 24 inches of snow up here.
Oh my gosh.
And literally I went out after we did the prediction show for Wicked Crazy Pinfalls, and I shoveled, and literally when I looked back out, there was another 8 inches already on the ground.
Jeez, that's insane, man. Oh my gosh. So welcome to January, right? As snow is falling everywhere. We got a small minor dusting here in Nashville. You got 24 inches. So yeah, we have all the opposite ends of the spectrum here. And I'm sure we're going to have an opposite end of the spectrum as far as opinions are concerned. Here on the PipeBomb Wrestling Podcast, the Royal Rumble is in the books. Guys, it was full of surprises. It was full of twists and turns. Places we thought it was going to go that it didn't go. Places that it went that it probably shouldn't have gone. But we're here to talk about all the things. Let's kick it off. Jared, you said immediately you were excited to talk about this. I'm going to throw to you first, man. Let's start at the very end of the show. Brock Lesnar coming in at number 30, chucking guys out and winning the Royal Rumble after losing the WWE Championship to Bobby Lashley earlier in the night. He wins the Rumble. He points to the sign. Brock Lesnar headlining the main event of WrestleMania. Can't say that I'm surprised, man, but just talk about your thoughts of the whole thing and what went down.
Well, I mean, I guess you can't say that you're surprised because you called a lot of it. This is a show that actually has done something that WWE hasn't done much in a long time, and that's spark emotion. Whether you're pissed off, whether you're happy, whether that you're just flabbergasted, whatever the case may be. After I saw Brock lose the way that he lost, I was pissed off. And, man, whenever I heard his music come on there at the end, it was like, yes, I hope he goes in there and clobbers everybody. And he did.
And he did. That's exactly right. Throwback. I'm going to throw to you next. What'd you think about the whole booking of Brock Lesnar and all that sort of stuff?
It's kind of predictable, to be honest with you, if you think about it, because a lot of people were picking Lashley in that match to go. So what are you going to do with Brock to further along the whole feud that they were cluster screwing with what they happened with day one when they had Lesnar in? The only way to fix it is just make him lose to Lashley in some other way. And then if you're further along the storyline with Reigns, they fixed it, and now everybody's expecting something where, oh, it's Brock going to be mad, and the commentary with McAfee saying they better go to the convenience store to get another get like freaking Depends and stuff like that. I mean, it's typical WWE booking where you're gonna see one people that they know it's the moneymaker is going to end up at the end of the night winning it, and a lot of the stuff on this pay-per-view was very predictable, very WWE-esque. A lot of the stuff you knew was going to happen. Some of the participants in the Rumbles were very, very exciting because some of them you haven't seen in a long time, especially in the women's one. But for me, Brock winning the men's rumble after that Lashley match, the way it was going to either come about or the way it's going to happen was just, it was very predictable. But overall, the show was pretty decent.
Yeah, it was good. And Andy, we kind of talked about it on the podcast earlier this week. We kind of thought that it would lean towards Brock or Roman winning the men's rumble, depending on what happened. Don't forget, everybody that is checking us out for the first time, thank you for joining us. We are live on the bodyslam.net YouTube channel. We're having some issues streaming on other platforms. So just make sure you head on over to bodyslam.net's YouTube channel. Check it out. We've got comments rolling in. We're going to address those. I think Mr. Unlucky Trapper Gaming, I think that's our boy Mike Irwin checking us out. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. Mike's comment that I have to read out loud, Billy Belcher is my icon. My goodness. I love it. So I'm going to throw to Mr. Billy Belcher next. Brock winning the Rumble. You called Big E, which we all kind of called. But what was your thoughts on overall the men's Rumble and how they booked the Brock situation?
I think it was good because they're setting up Brock and Roman. Naturally, that's where all the money is.
Yep.
That's where everybody wanted to go.
I mean, you got to think that you're trying to fit. I keep saying this over and over, and these guys that are here with me are going to start smacking me every time I say it, or they can play a drinking game for every time that I say it. But they're trying to fill up AT&T Stadium twice, 2 nights in a row. Jared, I see that call. So they're trying to fill up AT&T Stadium 2 nights in a row. They got to put the money there. They got to put the money matches. And Dad, you're exactly right. Brock Lesnar is the money match. Adam, you're another newbie on the show, so I'll throw to you next. What's your thoughts on the whole thing?
I mean, right after the Brock and Lashley match, I told you it said so. Brock's coming in at 30 and winning the Rumble.
Yep.
It's fine, but it's boring. It speaks to the bigger problem of they've had a whole year to build up somebody else who could fill up the stadium.
Yep.
They didn't take the time to do it.
I agree with that.
So now they have to put in Brock.
Yep. I agree with that. Mike feeding us another comment. Brock and Roman didn't need that for that feud. I agree with that.
Yep.
And Andy, we talked about that too. They did. I don't think they needed it. The same thing that we'll get to the women's Rumble in a second, but I didn't think Ronda and Becky needed a Rumble win for that match to happen either. But we got both of those things.
Yeah, I don't think they needed this to happen for the end result to become Brock and Roman at WrestleMania. Honestly, Brock could come out on Friday after the Rumble and just say, well, you screwed me out of the title. I'm going to take your title now. And
yeah,
there you go. You're off to the races with the Rumble. The thing about the Rumble that is always fun is it's a really great platform for somebody like a couple years ago, Drew McIntyre, to accelerate his career up even more to where he can face Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. Or it's a really great boost for somebody that's right on the edge of being a main event player and pushing them over the edge to become a main event player. And to me, both Rumble winners are already main event players that don't need to win the Rumble. And I'm not saying that main eventers can't win the Rumble, but I'm just saying in a field like this, we don't know who's facing Bobby. And that's fine. We don't need to know. But I think it would have been more interesting for someone like Big E to win, that it pushes his career, or someone like we talked about Kevin Owens winning.
Yeah.
That really would have put him over the top as well. So I don't think Brock needed to win the Rumble for this to happen. But, kind of like the consensus is after the Brock-Bobby Lashley match, it was predictable that, okay, Brock's coming out between 27 and 30, and he's going to win the whole thing.
Yep. Well, I mean, you said it. They could have found, and Mike said it as well, they could have found another way. All Roman would have had to do was be like, look, Brock, you lost your title and you didn't win the Rumble. Okay, you got to go through the Elimination Chamber now. If you can go through the Elimination Chamber, then you can have a shot at me. So I think there could have been some different avenues to go there. But again, the consensus, like we said, it's WWE booking. It was kind of predictable. But Andy, you said it earlier, Brock Lesnar and Ronda Rousey won Royal Rumbles in the same night. I mean, let's talk about, Jared, the weight of that. I mean, like that, it's amazing that us 6 wrestling fans are sitting here shaking our heads that Brock Lesnar and Ronda Rousey won Royal Rumbles in the same nights. Like 4 or 5 years ago, that would have blown our minds. But now, Jared, it's commonplace, man.
Well, I mean, part of it, and I know that you all kind of thought this was predictable, and I mean, you even called it, Chris. And but with the wrestling that I watch, like on AEW, because I've completely given up on WWE for the most part, this is the first time I've watched in a while, and I'm just glad they put on a show that at the end of it, I wasn't like, why did I waste my time? I mean, you could have booked them this way, you could have booked them that way, blah 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 blah. They failed to create new superstars. We know this. We've bitched about it for what, 4 or 5 years now. They're not going to change until Vince dies or, you know, whatever, somebody else takes over. Not that I ever want that to happen, but it just is the way it is, man. And I'm just glad they put on the show that was at least watchable and somewhat exciting at points.
Yep. Throwback, I'm going to get you in on this. We've talked about how even Mike left us a comment and said it was the weakest Rumble lineup ever. We talked about it in our house. There wasn't a lot of surprises. There wasn't a lot of legends coming back. Throwback, did that shock you? I mean, we had Shane McMahon, which that was interesting. You had Bad Bunny and you had Johnny Knoxville, and that was your shockers for the Royal Rumble. In my opinion, a little bit of a letdown as far as the shock factor. What do you think?
So I'm gonna do differently than for the men's is that I think the women's Royal Rumble was a lot more compelling and amazing compared to the men's. Like you pointed out, you had Shane, Knoxville, and Bad Bunny, and that wasn't it. But in the women's, you had Melina starting out. You had Alicia Fox that nobody was talking about.
Yep.
You know, you had so many people that are either past or, you know, people that worked for the company in the past and stuff. Like the pop that Mickie James got was insane, and her coming out to that theme music and having underneath there. Years ago, they wouldn't even acknowledge a different title from a different company if that person came over. It would just been like something different. And look what they did with this. I honestly think for the first time ever, the women's Royal Rumble was a lot better than the men's.
That's as far as the points that you made. Absolutely, I agree with that. The only thing that I'll disagree is I felt like it got bogged down in the middle a little bit, just from a wrestling perspective. But Andy, you pointed out earlier, the Royal Rumble match is probably like the worst match of the year if you're looking for technical wrestling. It's just great to see all the surprises. So for what it was, Throwback makes a great point. A lot of diversity in the women's category.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the women's Rumble, probably for the first time ever, was more exciting, a lot more fun to watch, got more of a reaction from us just watching in person, but it sounded like the crowd as well was more engaged in the women's Rumble than the men's Rumble. Because in the men's Rumble, all you had AJ and Shinsuke starting it off, which that was really promising for have those two guys start off the Rumble, have kind of like the match within the match of, you know, it being kind of exciting, but then it kind of quickly fell off from there. And it kind of
felt more flat though, going into it.
Yeah. And like the only big pops that really happened was when Drew showed up, because nobody was really expecting Drew.
Yep.
And Randy. Like Randy got the biggest pop of the night.
And and they booed like crazy when he got checked out.
Yeah. So if that's your lineup, you know, for a men's Royal Rumble, it was definitely extremely, to me, underwhelming.
I agree. Yeah.
Was that Randy's hometown?
Yeah, it is.
Yes, that's true.
Oh,
Jared, that's a great point for sure.
But also, before we keep going about it and touch the women's side, there was one person underneath everybody's radar. If you asked everybody in the community about this, do you ever thought that Sarah Logan would be back in WWE, even if it was for a night? Nobody was talking. They were talking about the Bellas coming back, you know, Summer Rae. They were talking about all these people that supposedly nobody, not even anybody tweeted or anything like that, said anything about Sarah Logan. And there she is. And I was completely happy and shocked at the same time.
Oh yeah, we were too. That definitely got a shock out of our house as well. Jared, I was gonna mention earlier when we were talking about the men's and we were talking about AJ and Nakamura, and Throwback said it kind of fell flat quickly. It was a turd sandwich, wasn't it, Jared? Make sure to get that in there, right?
Well, I mean, AJ and Nakamura, I thought that the pop they were getting from the crowd and what little action we did see was kind of more. I mean, it was better than what me and you saw at WrestleMania that we went to. I thought. I mean, the crowd.
Yeah.
I felt a huge letdown in the crowd that night. We were there, but I do want to address this one thing before we go on with the women. And I agree with what y'all said, with the exception that I don't think overall that people were more excited by the women's Royal Rumble just because that everybody seems to focus on the men. They always have. They probably always will.
Right.
But early on, man, it looked like amateur hour out there. I mean, these girls. I mean, I love most of these females that came out. These wrestlers, but they were barely connecting. They were botching moves. I mean, it looked like a crap show to me on and off through the thing. That was all I didn't like, and maybe I'm just getting more used to watching female wrestlers on other wrestling shows, and they make more contact. Like I said, I probably haven't watched WWE or AF in 3 months. So,
Well, I mean, go ahead, Throwback.
And the thing I wanted to touch about the women's stuff is that with the reports coming out earlier this week about Ronda possibly being in St. Louis, you already knew if she was there, what the outcome was. But I'm basing what I'm saying more so on the things you didn't know that not were reported. No, did anybody of you guys hear Alicia Fox was going to be in the Rumble? Probably not. Sarah Logan? Probably not. The Rumble itself on the men's was weak for the most part, but as much as the crowd wasn't into the women's one, the viewer at home was probably more into the women's side of the Rumble than the men's, because obviously the way the pay-per-view started and then basically escalated into the women's, you had an amazing match go all the way into the women's Rumble, whereas you had, Miz, the mixed tag match going into the men's Rumble. The buildup was completely two-sided of the coin.
Right. Oh, I'm totally with you on that. If you guys are just now checking us out, welcome to the official Royal Rumble post show live on the bodyslam.net YouTube channel, presented to you by the fine folks here at the PipeBomb Wrestling Podcast, a show that is for the fans, by the fans. We drop brand new shows every Monday and Wednesday on the bodyslam.net YouTube channel and on some Fridays. A lot of Fridays here frequently, here recently. So make sure you're subscribed to the bodyslam.net YouTube channel. If you're not already, make sure you follow us on social media at PBW Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. That's where you keep up with us. That's where you interact with us. We greatly appreciate your support. My name is Chris Belcher. This is my co-host, Andy York. With us, our special guest, my dad, Billy Belcher, Adam Williamson, my brother from another mother, Jared Justice, and Throwback from the bodyslam.net channel. We appreciate all you guys hanging out with us. I'm going to throw to Dad real quick. Any final thoughts on the men's and women's Royal Rumble before we look at some of the other matches?
Well, I thought what Throwback said was about the women's. It had a little more shock value.
Yeah.
But I like to have seen Sarah Logan stay in there a little bit longer. That would have, since she's not been around, no one expected her there.
Yeah.
But I agree with Jared on it wasn't very technical.
No.
At all. But it was more shock value than the men's because the men's was real predictable.
And Adam, I said this. I said that I felt like the women's kind of got bogged down a little bit because they threw out the best wrestler way early in Sasha Banks. Like Bianca came in and that was fine. Liv came in, that was fine. But Sasha Banks going out after like number 5 comes out. What was up with that?
I think part of it, that's the downside of having a bunch of returning veterans who maybe haven't been in the ring that much over the past decade.
Yeah.
You don't have that ring general in there to
direct
traffic. And once Sasha went away, you didn't really have anybody experienced until Natty came in.
Right.
So, and you have that long problem, but it was still fun.
Yeah, it was fun. I agree. It definitely had the shock value, Dad, like you said. It was what it needed to be, I guess. And we got to number 28. We got to Ronda Rousey. What final thoughts from you on both the men's and women's Rumble?
Yeah, I think, the things that we look for the most in the Rumble is not necessarily technical wrestling, but it's the shock entrances, the shock eliminations, the big surprises, the big winners, things like that. And I completely agree that the women's Rumble delivered on that more than the men's Rumble did.
Absolutely.
And it was, we found ourselves number 20, number 21, saying, "Where is everybody?
Yep.
Like, what? Why is this moving along?" It was going along fast, but it was like, this is boring. Like,
Yeah.
and the men's rumble was getting boring at one point, whereas the women's, we were like, "Oh, it's cool to see Alicia Fox. It's cool to see Sarah Logan,
Michelle McCool.
Yeah, it was cool to see all those. Cameron even got a pop, and I think that's the first time she ever got a pop probably in her life.
That
But
is
I was
very
like,
true.
"Oh, Cameron's in the rumble. Like that's shocking that she was there." And so I think as a whole, the women's rumble necessarily didn't flow a lot better, but the things that we look for in the rumble, I think the women's rumble delivered on it
was
more than the men's rumble.
Absolutely. Reading some comments here. Our boy Tyler Peters. Thank you, Tyler, for tuning in and hanging out with us tonight. We appreciate it. Spoilers have hurt our expectations concerning surprises via the internet. Jared, that is right up our alley. Man, for those of you who are listening that don't know, Jared and I have been best friends since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. Jared was a little taller than me. But we basically grew up together watching wrestling. We lived like 0.2 of a mile down the road from each other. We're cousins by marriage, but we're brothers in the end. But man, don't you remember watching Raw and Nitro and all these things and just being shocked by, for example, Scott Hall showing up and us not knowing? Imagine the way the internet would have been blown up and all of this stuff if something like that had happened back in those days when the internet would have been a thing. Now, like Throwback said, Ronda was speculated all week of being in St. Louis, so it wasn't necessarily a shock, that she was going to be in there. So to that point, Jared, I mean, a lot of stuff leaks out, and maybe that's why we're sitting here speculating like we are. And we're like, well, it wasn't as good because somebody reported this or somebody reported that. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, just look at all our faces. Who's the only one that came on here and was like, hey, that was halfway decent. I'm kind of excited to talk about this. And who always sitting there like this? That's because I have not read or cared about WWE in the past 3 months. And I did not know all these things. Whenever you told me what you thought was going to happen, I thought, my God, he's a wizard over here. How's he predicting this stuff? But I haven't been reading all this crap online like you guys have. And it's really up to everybody whether they want to read it or not. If you want to have a better time, don't look at all the crap online. Just watch it. That's 100. It's up to everybody.
And the other thing also is there was internet during there. It just you had fan boards and stuff like that. You just didn't have
that's true.
The amount of people it is now.
Not as widespread.
And to touch back real quick about Sasha being eliminated early, if Ronda wasn't there, Sasha probably would have been towards the tail end, and she probably would have won the Rumble.
I agree with that.
So if Ronda was there, you're better off keeping Sasha out, who could have been your winner, out early because, well, obviously you said Ronda and Brock are moneymakers, so you want your moneymaker to headline night 1 and have another one on headline night 2.
Yep. So it makes sense the way that they did it. Mike chiming in, commenting again on YouTube, said lots of wasted spots. No Bailey, no Asuka, and way too many legends. To comment on that, reports came out either yesterday or today that neither Bailey or Asuka have been cleared yet from their surgery. So that's why we didn't get those two. And the amount of legends, Adam, touch on this because we had a count in our house of how many women were actually on the active roster and how many legends we had. So it was pretty interesting.
Yeah. I mean, as you would expect, the bulk of the women were from the active roster, but there were a lot of legends close to, not quite, but close to half, depending on how you count Rousey.
Yep.
So,
maybe
there were some spots that had to be filled.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to count her as active now, especially since she won and she's already been advertised for Raw on Monday and that kind of thing. So Throwback, any final thoughts from you about either the men's or the women's Royal Rumble before we kind of look at the rest of the card?
The thing with the women's though that got me was just like so many great people in there that you haven't seen in years, where it's like, oh, we saw Shane a couple of years ago. Oh, we saw Bad Bunny, last year. Oh, we saw this person. And whereas the women's, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe it's Alicia Fox. Oh my God, it's Sarah Logan. Cameron, oh my God. And then the whole thing with Sonya and Naomi and stuff like that. That was the almost interesting thing that a lot of people I don't think are going to talk about. That when Sonya got entered and she sat out, they had a pattern for that because of what's going on with her. Naomi, Cameron came out, and then all of a sudden Naomi was the next entrant. So they kind of gave you a hint how the order of elimination was going to go with that. But overall, I love the women's better than the men, and that's really weird to say because I think out of all the years of watching the Royal Rumble, the women's for the first time ever had the best roster overall and had the best, way everything panned out.
We definitely didn't get a lot of traditional Rumble surprises or legends from the guys' side. So that definitely bogged that down a little bit. Let's move on. We've been mentioning the Brock and Bobby match for a little bit. Brock did lose the championship to Bobby Lashley, but thanks to Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman making his way back to the island of relevancy. Very, very cool that it happened the way that it did. Jared, you're going to be shocked by this because I'm going to throw to you first. I thought this was the match of the night. If you look at the card, I really thought Brock and Bobby was the match of the night, man. It was what it needed to be. It had a shock ending. I thought it, and it was one of Brock's longer matches. I thought it was really good, Jared. What did you think about that match?
Man, I thought it was awesome. I think the match of the night was Seth and Roman. But
yeah,
Brock and Bobby, man, I mean, for two big, huge guys that can go in there and they don't always have to do the most to get that paycheck at the end of the day. They went in there and they tore it up, man. I mean, I thought they did really good without taking any kind of crazy bumps that would have maybe killed them or something.
Right.
I mean, I thought that the match was excellent.
Andy, I'll throw to you. I feel like I haven't let you talk much. Sorry. I'm just trying to sprinkle it around the room, guys. We got a big panel here. We just want to make sure everybody gets their thoughts in. Andy, what do you think about the booking of that match? I mean, we kind of anticipated either Roman or Brock would lose their title. Roman won his match first, which we'll get to in a minute. And then I thought the match was booked really well. And Roman and the twist at the end, having Heyman, it's pretty cool to me.
Yeah, I think it was a really solid match. It was everything that I had hoped for and more with this match because, we had been talking about this match on the podcast for probably since after SummerSlam. I think we were talking about this could be a potential WrestleMania match or, Rumble match or whatever. And this match it delivered on everything. It was the first time I can remember watching Brock Lesnar chain wrestle at the beginning of the match in a long time, which was really interesting. The one thing I will say is I don't know the status of Bobby Lashley's shoulder because of all the German suplexes. It seemed like he landed on his shoulder like 4 or 5 times in a row.
I was getting ready to bring that up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, was Brock not tossing him right, or was Bobby
I think Bobby was turning too much.
It looked like Bobby was turning, and I don't know why.
Yeah, it looked brutal.
Most wrestlers say that those German suplexes, they look wicked, but they're one of the easiest moves to take. But man, it looked like it was about to kill Bobby. I mean, the way he was taking those.
Yeah, it looked rough. But overall, the match I thought was a lot of fun. I really liked the Roman interference and Paul Heyman turning on Brock, and the whole drama of everything is what I love the most about professional wrestling and the storytelling and everything. And so I thought this was storytelling at its best in a lot of ways, and Roman coming in and absolutely tearing Brock in half with the spear, and then the shot with the title and everything. I thought it was absolutely great.
You didn't.
I love how he just took that title and threw it down and just kind of made a face like that title don't mean crap.
Yeah,
right.
Something.
Yeah, that was really good. And I made this point afterwards. It's like, okay, the handcuffs of Paul Heyman are now off Brock Lesnar again. Now we're going to get fun Brock Lesnar again, which is going to be great. Throwback, what do you think about this booking of Brock, especially in this run since SummerSlam until now, and how we've seen a little bit lighter of a mood with Brock, a little bit like handcuffs off, really, and giving him the microphone for the first time in his career? And then your thoughts on this match.
It reminded me of Boombox Brock.
Yes.
Him walking around with that thing. He'd grab the mic and just start trying to rap and stuff like that. I think for the first time in his life, he is he's very content with what he's doing. It's not like, if they let him do what he needs to. They bring him back when he's ready, and then they give him more flexibility. So if this is going to be one of the last, let's say, 5 or 6 runs left in him, they're going to end up keeping him as happy. And if he wants to be like this as a face, just keep doing it. Why not? The match itself was really good. It told it told a story, but there is a wrench in this story that it could lead into because of that Roman and Seth finish, because that could be wrenched into their match. And then we'll have the San Francisco WrestleMania where Seth cashed in all over again. That could be a possibility at Mania also, but we don't know that for sure. We don't know what's going to happen with the matches at the Chamber,
right?
Excuse me, but I think the German suplexes were great. I thought the grappling and everything, just like going back to their amateur styles originally. And they mentioned about the MMA. They talked about Bellator a bit. It's just, this is a match that for me, sorry, with all the coughs and stuff, was amazing. Wasn't the match of the night, but if they let everything play out and not have this finish, it would have been like instantaneous. This would have been better than Danielson versus Hangman or Danielson versus Omega, because of the fact that if they had a clean finish on that, and then it led to something afterwards with Roman, then you could do something with the WWE title at Elimination Chamber to get it off Brock.
Yeah, so, I thought I'm with you, man. I thought the storytelling was really, really good on this, but it just, I'm just excited to see this version of Brock back. And I had a point that I was getting ready to make, and I can't remember what it was. So I'm just going to throw to Dad.
I've got a point to make right quick.
Go ahead. Okay, Jared, go ahead. I had a point, and I lost it.
I think why that we're seeing this version of Brock that we all love is because his UFC run is over. He no longer has to worry about being a BMF. He can go in there and just have fun and not have to worry about like crossover fans from MMA thinking, oh, this guy's just a silly wrestler. We're not going to take him seriously the next time he comes back to the UFC. Brock doesn't have to worry about that now, so he can kind of be the fun Brock that we like.
But I want to piggyback on that real quick. What you said, Jay, and I want to ask this: is what you guys think? Do you think what you said about the UFC fans for Brock doesn't matter? The hardcore Brock fan, just not WWE, Brock Lesnar fan, who's followed him probably part of his early run-ins in WWE into his UFC stuff. Do you guys see that infecting him like this and caring about it? They probably think this is him as a performer is his best stuff, but they probably really don't care about what will affect them to be happy. They just probably want him to be happy, and this is one of those things. Do you see that is the case?
Well, I think one of the reasons maybe that we're touching on why he's doing better, or why he's happier, or is this one of his last runs or what have you, I think some of that has to do honestly with the amount of time that he's had off, because before he returned at SummerSlam in August, he hadn't wrestled since WrestleMania 36. So from March of 2020 to August of 2021, Brock Lesnar was gone, so, and that's the longest break, I think, Andy, that he's had in quite a long time.
Yeah.
I think
it is too.
Because he came back in what?
2012.
2012.
After Mania.
And he really did a lot of stuff almost every year after that.
Yeah.
So this has been the longest break that he's had. So I think that did him a lot of good. I really do. And I think the fans are just, I think it's one of those things where we're seeing Brock Lesnar as a baby face for the first time. and because he's always been the heel, he's always had Paul Heyman, yada yada yada. Well, we're seeing him in a different light, and he's doing something different, and he's got this huge beard, and he has a ponytail, as Adam calls it, his midlife crisis. So it's just a different Brock Lesnar, and it's cool. So I think that attributes to it a lot.
Well, I think what's really cool is I think we're seeing what happens when you flip the script on what we're used to, because we're used to seeing. Who would have thought 2 years ago, WrestleMania, or a couple years ago, WrestleMania 34, Brock versus Roman was the main event, and everybody was like, "We don't want to see this. Nobody cares about this." It was an awful match. You guys were there in person to see the atrocity that was that match. Yep. And now, a couple years later, it's like, oh, we get to see heel Roman Reigns versus babyface Brock Lesnar, who both are doing some of the best stuff of their career right now. Brock is having. You can tell when somebody's having fun with something. When Brock cares, there's nobody better than him.
Yep.
And that we see Brock is carrying right now on this run, and that's why all the stuff he's been in has been absolutely amazing to see.
Yep, I agree. Dad, I'm going to throw to you because it's just like it's wrestling storytelling 101, and the fans are bought in hook, line, and sinker because Andy just mentioned WrestleMania 34, you had a babyface Roman Reigns versus heel Brock Lesnar. Nobody cared. And now everybody cares, and the roles are reversed. It's wrestling 101.
Well, Roman now is what John Cena used to be.
Right.
Everybody hated Cena. They didn't want him to win. Everybody hated him. Everybody booed him. And now they're doing the same thing to Roman because he's at the top of the mountain. And now you got babyface Brock coming in. And I think, and I don't know this for sure, did Brock lose his last UFC match?
I believe so.
I thought he won.
I don't remember.
I thought he won.
I think he won.
Maybe he did. I don't know.
But then he tested. Then he got drug tested and got popped for it because that's when the Randy Brock thing happened.
That's right.
I caught the other night. I caught one of his UFC matches where he got really wore out, and I think Brock's a person that he thinks about the dollars in his head. That's what Brock thinks about. Where the money is where Brock goes. But this babyface Brock is really good, but I still think he could turn mean anytime he wanted to.
Sure he can.
And I think the match between him and Bobby tonight, there was no technical wrestling in it. It was a college brutal match.
It really was.
And they were just wearing each other out till Roman come in there. And that was the spot of me tonight was Roman come in, did that, and then Heyman turned back.
Yep.
And I think you get a much more better babyface Brock without Heyman.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I mean, the fans were cheering him tonight. They wanted him to win the Rumble. You could tell. I mean, after Randy got eliminated, but you could tell the fans were behind Brock. They wanted to see it happen, and it happened. Jared, you and I were at SummerSlam 2021 when Brock Lesnar returned, and man, couldn't hear myself think when that music hit. And just a couple of years before, I know that Brock Lesnar is an attraction, and people want to see Brock just because he's Brock. But man, Jared, there was something about that pop and that reaction that night that just made this feel different. And I think we're seeing all of that come to fruition now.
Oh yeah, man. I remember turning to you and you were right next to me. And I was like, can you believe this? And maybe some obscenities thrown in. But I couldn't even hear myself whenever I was talking to you. And I mean, that was just ridiculous pop. And people love Brock, and they always, I think, even me and you, I've always liked Brock. You've always mostly not liked Brock. But people have always wanted to cheer this man because he goes in there and he's a butt kicker, just like what Stone Cold was. People want to cheer that.
Yep.
But we have always been directed by Vince to not cheer that.
Right.
And so now that we can, and he's giving us a reason to, and he's funny, and even whenever he doesn't try to be funny, he's funny, then it just makes it awesome, man.
Especially Andy when he comes out in the cowboy hat and just everybody loses.
That was my only complaint is that he didn't come out in the cowboy hat. I was hoping that we would see Brock Lesnar full USC guard.
Will be next.
But the cowboy hat. Oh my gosh, no. But I will say about that, like the thing about Brock that has always been intriguing is we haven't always liked how WWE has booked Brock. But
Undertaker.
just the thought of Brock Lesnar being in a match, just the thought of how good the match could be is what gets people involved. For example, AJ Styles and Brock Lesnar, that match was amazing. Brock Lesnar versus Daniel Bryan was amazing. Brock Lesnar versus Finn Balor was amazing. But then we have the matches where it's like Brock Lesnar versus Samoa Joe. This should be an awesome match, and it wasn't.
Brock Lesnar versus Ricochet.
Brock Lesnar versus Dean Ambrose at WrestleMania was one that I was like, this is where things are going to be fun. We're going to get some old school, barbed wire and thumbtacks and all this other stuff. And it was not even like I would call it a WWE PG Extreme Rules match. There were just some chairs and that was it. And so I think the thing that's always been intriguing about Brock is when the match happens, it's always like, this could be a lot of fun if Brock shows up and is the best version of Brock. And since he returned from SummerSlam, every single time he's appeared has been the best version of Brock. And it's just so much fun to watch.
I completely agree. All right. We have talked a lot about Brock Lesnar. Let's talk about his perceived adversary for WrestleMania 38 in Dallas, Roman Reigns, as Jared mentioned earlier, probably the match of the night. I can get down with that. But I don't know, when Brock and Bobby ended, I can't believe I'm saying this, that Brock Lesnar had match of the night, but I think he did. But the other great match on the card, Adam, and we'll start with you, Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, the match that we wanted to see. And Rollins comes out as Shield Seth Rollins to the Shield music in his tactical gear. I mean, the mind games that Rollins has been playing. And then the match obviously delivered the finish, and not so much.
Oh, the match was amazing. I mean, if it wasn't for like the last, 3 minutes, it would have been not just the match of the night, but like one of the WWE matches of the year.
Yes.
And then it's the kind of finish you hate, because not only is it a screwy finish, but it's the guy who loses is still the guy who walks away looking best.
Right.
And it was just one of those, laugh at it, internet meme, Roman's got to look strong kind of things.
Yep.
It just didn't work. But man, Seth was pulling some of his best heel work.
He was.
And he's a great heel, but this was another level tonight.
Dad, you mentioned it last night when we were watching SmackDown. Rollins came out in the purple and green suit looking like the Joker, a very Batman Joker-esque storyline. And then he took it to another level tonight as Shield Seth Rollins. And then the match obviously delivered because these are two of the best performers in the business.
Absolutely true. And I think the finish could have been a little bit better, but the point was made for the whole match. Seth has been ragging him the whole time, and he's putting him down the whole time. And Roman just finally got tired of it, and, the match went. He just choked the life out of him.
Yep.
Then beat him with a chair and said, I'm done with you.
Right.
So, Seth is a great performer, and him and Roman, they know each other so well.
Yeah.
So it's still a good match. The finish could have been just a little bit better, I think.
Andy?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. The match was amazing. Potentially could have been match of the night. Could have been one of WWE's matches of the year, whatever. The finish really bothered me, and I hated the finish.
Yep.
But what was really interesting was after the match when he got the chair. If you go back and watch it, when he hit Seth with the chair, it was the same exact thing as when Seth turned on the Shield.
Exactly, and the way he landed on the rope.
The whole moment with him beating him with the chair was the exact same thing as Seth turning on the Shield. So obviously this is not over. One, because of the beatdown afterwards. Two, technically Seth still has never lost to Roman in a championship match.
It's true.
So that continues on. Probably going into the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view in Saudi Arabia or whatever. I like Throwback's idea of doing the triple threat back at WrestleMania. I think that would be a lot of fun to see that match as well. But yeah, I think when this first came on as the first match of the night, which was very shocking that it was first match of the night, we all kind of looked and said, Seth has a really great chance to win this. Like, Seth could win this match, first match of the night. Seth has been, SmackDown was in Nashville a couple weeks ago. Seth was probably the most over, besides, like, Roman got a massive pop when he came out.
Yeah, he did.
But as the show went on, the fans were singing Seth's music during his match. And so, Seth is starting to come along as a potential babyface to go right up against Roman. And I think we're starting to see plant the seeds of maybe this doesn't happen at Saudi Arabia. Maybe this doesn't happen at WrestleMania. Maybe SummerSlam, or maybe like we're seeing the build to this. But I think they could have found a better way to end the match other than, Roman getting irate and choking him out past the 5 second.
Mike just commented on YouTube again, and he said, do y'all think it's a face turn for Seth or it's a one-off thing? I think throwback, I'm going to go to you here with this because you were the first one to propose the idea of doing the triple threat. And I think if you could, you might turn Seth Rollins face. I think he's sort of a tweener anyway, because of Andy's point of everybody getting behind him. But man, this was a great match, and it would be even greater if you added Brock Lesnar to it at WrestleMania and run all three of them, like you said, man.
I think for me, Seth's in between. He's a tweener. Yeah. And the reason being is they have him as that is because they play to the other person's strengths. So Roman's strength is to be that badass, he'll want to, destroy everybody, but he wants to hide from people sometimes. And, when, the shit hits the fan, he can go. But that's why he seemed like he was more of baby face. And then next thing you know, he's going to be with somebody where he has to play the heel. So he's playing to his own personal strengths, and WWE is using that to push the next person.
I mean,
the thing is with that.
Go ahead.
And the thing is with that, the idea of the triple threat is that Seth's gonna not go against Roman at the Chamber because of the fact that they're trying to tease something. And let's say the storyline goes is that Seth says, "You haven't beat me still, and I want a shot," and Roman's like, "No." And they turn around and make him go into the Chamber and win it. That could be one way. Or, Brock gets hurt or something. I don't know. But when they figure it out, they'll find a way. But in the end, this match was the match of the night for me. But the finish was very disappointing. And it's the same way I felt with Lashley and Brock. Both endings of both two really great matches ended the same way. And it was just, sad to see it.
It was. Jared, I want to throw to you though, man, because we were texting at the beginning of the show and this match kicked off the show, and I don't think either of us expected it. Piggyback on what everybody said and your thoughts on this match.
I thought the match was awesome. I think that just like I kind of told you, I think that definitely after watching this match, Seth has to be involved in WrestleMania somehow. I don't know if he's going to beat Bobby for the championship and then somehow interject himself with Brock and Roman, and both titles are going to be in there. But after watching this match, I think that everybody kind of smacked themselves on the head and remembered that Seth Rollins is a big game guy. And that regardless of what his personality or character is that they're making him portray, he can still go in that ring. And man, I think either WrestleMania weekend or post WrestleMania on Raw, Seth has to be involved somehow in this Roman Reigns deal.
I mean, we've talked a lot on our podcast about how Bobby Lashley's had an incredible year, and that doesn't discount that Seth Rollins has had an incredible year as well. There's not too many guys on the roster that can pull off the character that Seth Rollins is pulling off right now, do it as well as Seth Rollins is doing it right now. Oh, and by the way, he can go tear up the ring, be the best performer on the show. Andy, especially since we revealed on our last show that we're going to be in Dallas for WrestleMania 38, I wouldn't mind seeing the triple threat run back.
No, I wouldn't either. I mean, to me, Seth Rollins is probably the best wrestler in WWE.
Him and AJ Styles.
AJ Styles. I think it's a toss up between the two, but I think the most consistent and the best the most consistent in the ring from bell to bell, put anybody in there with them and he can drag a great match out of them, I think is Seth Rollins. And I think this is kind of when you have two guys in the ring together that are working so great, when you add somebody like Brock Lesnar, who is the wild card that is great at just throwing people around like we've seen. Honestly, if they had a full match other than just a cash in at the last second, we could be having WrestleMania's version of the Royal Rumble in 2015 with Seth, Brock, and Cena. Just add Roman in there, and I think it's just as good, if not better, as a triple threat. So I'm that would be an awesome way to go with that. And it makes it more interesting because you could honestly see all three guys walk out of WrestleMania as the Universal Champion.
Sure, you could.
And all three would make a great choices to do it. I honestly think that 2022 it might be the year that we see Seth Rollins go up even more to where he's not going to be on the same level as guys like Brock and like Roman because in the company's eyes they're like super high up, but I think he is going to push himself up even more to where he's just below them, maybe even with them at times, but just below them. And I think we're going to see something amazing out of him this year.
I completely agree. All right.
One quick thing. When Seth was on Broken Skull Sessions,
yeah,
one thing he's never done is main event of WrestleMania.
Yep, that's right.
And
that's what he wants
they
to do.
might be playing it up for him to do that.
Yeah, I think that's very, very possible too. All right, if you guys are just now joining us, welcome to the BodySlam.net YouTube channel. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. Make sure you're following along. That way you get a notification each and every time, not only us, but one of our other fantastic shows, part of the network, drops a new show. As for us, we are the PipeBomb Wrestling Podcast, a show that is for the fans, by the fans. My name's Chris Belcher. My regular co-host, Mr. Andy York, is with me. Our buddies, Adam Williamson, my dad, Billy Belcher, my brother from another mother, Jared Justice, and Throwback. We are all hanging out talking about the Royal Rumble. If you are just now checking us out, again, follow us on social media. We are at PBW Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We drop shows every Monday and Wednesday and some Fridays. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Keep it tuned in right here. That way you get the video version. You can see our smiling faces every Monday and Wednesday. I know we would appreciate that. All right, guys, there are two more matches on the card, and then we'll get some final thoughts here. Becky Lynch and Doudrop. And then you had the mixed tag match, Edge and Beth Phoenix against Miz and Maurice. Throwback, I'll go to you first. Any brief thoughts on those two matches? Anything you got for us?
The only thing that of note for me was I can't call it the manhandle slam, the rock bottom off the second rope with Doudrop. For me, I think what was interesting at all this match is that Piper Niven, yes, I call her by her real name.
As we should.
It is literally the only one so far besides Bianca that could go like toe to toe with each move and make Becky try to push even further than she should have. I mean, would you ever thought that she would have gone like the rock bottom from the second rope? I mean,
right.
No, but I mean, it shows that Piper Niven is a viable commodity to go for a title very soon, and if it's not anytime soon, hopefully it's sooner than anything. That match was okay. You already knew what the outcome was because the Women's Rumble kind of just gave you that off the bat, but
yep.
It was interesting to see how it played out.
Dad, I'll throw to you next. Any thoughts on those two matches, Edge and Beth Phoenix, and then Becky and Doudrop?
How many matches were on the card tonight?
1,
5.
2, 3, 4, 5. Yep.
They were 4. No, I'll take it back. They were 5 and 6, and 6 not being on the card. I'm just not a fan of Doudrop. I think that when Becky goes in against her, and I understand this is the way it plays out, but I think that kind of lessens Becky a little bit because Becky is much more better than anyone else in the WWE except Charlotte.
Oh, Homer, come on.
Which was the big star in the Women's Royal Rumble. Carried the whole thing.
Oh my gosh,
but I think the Miz and Edge, I mean, I would just like to see Edge and Miz go at it without the ladies in there. But I think it would have been a better match. But to me, those were two bottom of the Royal Rumble.
I want to say this.
That's an old school person speaking.
I want to say this. I think Charlotte wasn't the star of the Women's Rumble, and I'm sorry, but I think a lot of people are overlooking Liv's performance. Like, Liv had probably one of the best performances of her career in this Rumble, and people are just like overlooking it just because of the fact that she was in the early parts of it and she got into like maybe in the 20s before she got let go. I think the Liv's performance outshined Ronda's return a bit, because if it kept going the way she was by time wise, she probably would have been in the final four. So I mean, to me, Liv was the VIP of this whole thing.
I mean, Andy, we called it that we thought she was going to be the Iron Woman, her or Bianca or Sasha. And Bianca was right up there in minutes as well. I think she actually had a longer time than Liv. And Sasha, we talked about that already. But any thoughts, Andy, on the Edge and Miz situation, and then Becky and Doudrop?
Yeah, I think the Becky Piper match was better than I was anticipating it to be.
I agree.
Not because I don't believe in Becky's skill, obviously, or in Piper's skill. Just the WWE booking at times for these matches can be very, not necessarily predictable, but annoying or very slow. They were coming off of the Women's Rumble, which, had the big shock. They had to deal with an entire section being evacuated because the WrestleMania sign got caught on fire.
Oh yeah, we haven't even talked about that yet.
There was a lot of distractions in this match that you could tell the crowd was kind of quiet for 3/4 of the match, maybe even maybe half of the match, not necessarily 3/4. But credit to them, there was a lot of times when both women were putting everything out there, and you could tell that the match was starting to pick up a little bit.
Yep.
When Becky hit her finisher from the second rope, that was a brilliant way to get to that, to do that move. I think, there's a couple times when Piper took it to Becky, and Becky was eating some punches, and she took that senton that looked brutal. And so, I think it was a great match to have. I think it was the perfect match to have at the Rumble, to kind of not have anybody like a Sasha or like a Bianca out of the Rumble, but also have a decent opponent for Becky that still makes her look strong heading into the Rumble or heading into WrestleMania, while also elevating Piper to that next level. And then for the mixed tag match is exactly what I was expecting it to be. It was fun. I enjoyed it. Maurice looked a lot better than I was anticipating, so credit to her. Beth Phoenix was ahead of her time when she was in WWE, and she still is showing that she can still go. I think we are probably done with this feud. We may get a rematch in Saudi Arabia. We may get the rematch at WrestleMania if they want to do one more. But I really enjoyed the match. I think it was a great buffer match between the Brock Bobby match and the Men's Royal Rumble match that kind of, gave the crowd a chance to cool off, then start to build that back up heading into the Royal Rumble.
Mike's comment that he just threw up is must have rehired the pyro guy that caught the Undertaker on fire. That's amazing.
They caught on fire twice.
I know, twice.
After both Rumbles.
I'm gonna read your other comment in just a minute, because I need to get Adam's thoughts first. Thoughts on the mixed tag, and then thoughts on Becky and Doudrop.
All right. First of all, I love Piper. Somebody needs to give her name back.
I agree.
Immediately. I thought that was one of her best American matches. So, Becky can go with anybody. Piper showed that she's as good as I've always thought she was. It's a shame that they found all the pyro that AEW left for that Moxley match. That kind of sucked, but the mixed match was my match of the night, because I always judge wrestling by how much fun I'm having.
Oh yeah,
when I'm watching it, and it was great. Miz is consistently one of the most underrated performers in the U.S.
100% agree.
Edge is up there in that consideration for the GOAT title. Maurice did way, way better than I thought she did. And Beth is one of the greatest women of all time. I mean, how was that not going to be a fun match? And the double glam slam?
Right. That was great.
That was beautiful. I loved it.
That was so good. I'm going to read that comment now, because it's going to get Dad fired up, and I can't wait to hear this. Mike says, and I quote, "Lost all respect for Father Belcher there. Did he just say that about Charlotte?"
Who has won more WWE titles than Charlotte Flair?
Ric Flair, John Cena, Triple H, Randy Orton.
Excuse me. What woman has won more titles than Charlotte Flair?
Trish Stratus would have if she had retired.
No, it's not would have. It's the fact. Charlotte has the most titles in the WWE.
Tom Brady's won more titles than almost anybody either. Does that make him the best?
And he played against the Rams like Charlotte.
Okay. Again, so Charlotte doesn't have a lot of competition. So whatever.
That's right. She don't have a lot of competition. You get to nail
Oh
them.
God, the one day I'm trying to get away from people asking me about Tom Brady. God,
Oh my goodness.
I'll just say this: I commend your dad's respect for freaking changing the freaking question halfway through from win all titles to women titles.
Oh my goodness. I know. All right. Let's put a bow on this, man. We've been here for an hour. Thank you guys who are still with us for tuning in, checking out our post show. Again, remember the PipeBomb Wrestling Podcast for the fans by the fans. We drop shows every Monday and Wednesday on the bodyslam.net YouTube channel. So make sure that you hit that subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. That way that you'll get a notification each and every time we drop a new episode, as well as all of our other partners on the channel. Our boy Jared Justice got a work phone call, so he had to bail out. So it was a blast having him on. Throwback, it was a blast having you on, man. Any final thoughts about the Royal Rumble before we sign off?
A lot of predictability and a lot of fun. I mean, it's a Royal Rumble show. What not you don't expect? I mean, there were a lot of people throwing names out too. So I mean, I even went out with one name that pretty much got cleared recently, and I thought it could be a shot that maybe Corey Graves could run into this.
We said the same
and
thing.
do something. And the men's Rumble was kind of predictable. The women's was amazing. It was kind of predictable with all the news this week, but it was still great. There were names that are missing that are still in process of coming back. Like you said, Bailey, Asuka, Alexa, who's been doing stuff on Raw, wasn't even in it. But the two major matches for me of the night ended in a big thud, and that's kind of disappointing because this is why a lot of people, and I'm a hardcore wrestling fan with stuff, obviously doing all this stuff, but I look at also as a casual fan. If the casual fan was picking this up on the Peacock network and looking at it and just like, okay, well, why do I want to tune in after watching two really good matches going the way it was, and then it just ended like that? Like,
Yeah.
Now you have the casual fan questioning whether they want to keep continuing watching. So now WWE, who pretty much doesn't care much about their casual fan, you want to keep the hardcore fan, is in a crosshair because they have to turn around now within 2 weeks to go to Elimination Chamber.
Yeah. Throwback, before we get ready to sign off, tell everybody where they can find you on social media and what you do for bodyslam.net and the things that you contribute on.
So what I do and contribute with Body Slam is every week I co-host a NXT post show on Tuesdays. I've been lucky. I've had the franchise on Bad Blood recently, the last few weeks. Sometimes I'll pop in on their post shows for certain things like AEW stuff. But other than that, every Thursday night, Wicked Crazy Pinfalls. We got me and a cast of characters, the Anakin JMT, Drew, Big Money Drew Nicholas. Sometimes we'll have like Maggie come in, the Fightful legend on there. We've had so many people, Aaron Entertainment. It's just endless. And we're going into February now and got some big stuff coming up, and it'll be fun. Other than that, check it out on Twitter, Throwback978 as one of the people
Right
used
there.
it. It's right down
right there. Yep.
Also youtube.com/throwback27 for the YouTube, and then do the same thing with the 978 for the Twitch. We're two-way from being affiliated. But other than that, check out bodyslams.net YouTube page because you'll see me every Tuesday night. I'm hoping to have Drew Nicholas come by at some point to do an NXT show, and maybe you guys could pop in too, because it's always good to have a rotating group of people coming in.
It's a lot of fun, and we appreciate you hopping on with us. Before we let everybody go, obviously I want to get final thoughts from everybody in the room. I'm going to start with Mr. Ancient School, and I can call him that, number one, because he's my dad, number two, because he called himself that first. I'll start with my dad on this one. Final thoughts on the Royal Rumble and just kind of where we're headed with the road to WrestleMania.
I think it was a typical WWE Royal Rumble. It delivered on a lot of things. It was really pretty good, but I think it could have used a little extra pop in the men's Rumble with a few extra surprises in there. They didn't have no real surprises in there. And then when Brock lost the belt, he was coming back to be in the Rumble, and he was going to win it. That's to set up everything else. And WWE sets it up just like a Royal Rumble, SummerSlam, whatever it is. They move on to the next one, and they really don't care about the casual fans. They just like Throwback said, the hardcore fans is what they're looking for. And I think the hardcore fans got what they wanted. Me personally, I think it could have a few more pops, but overall, I give it a good grade. It was a good Rumble.
Adam?
I popped harder for 30 seconds of Danhausen this week than I did for anything at the Rumble. So
as most of the wrestling world did, you're exactly right.
So this is that's why I stopped watching WWE so much. That's why I'm a Hulu highlights kind of guy. So this is other than a little bit of fun in the women's Rumble and a little bit of fun with that mixed tag match, just makes me think WWE doesn't really care if I keep watching them.
So the consensus around the horn is WWE doesn't care about their fans. All right, cool. Andy, what you got?
I know that's like a brand new idea. That they don't care about their fans.
It is.
I think, we've talked about it before in the podcast. The Royal Rumble is my favorite pay-per-view of the year. I love the Rumble more than WrestleMania, just because of
not this year,
but because of the shocks and the all the fun stuff that goes into a Rumble. The whole pay-per-view as a whole had a lot of potential. I mean, when you look at the card, it was shaping up. We talked about it, shaping up to be one of the best Royal Rumble pay-per-views maybe ever. Like it had a really strong card, and it didn't really deliver in a lot of things. The Roman Seth match was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. The finish to that match took a lot out of it. The women's Rumble had a lot of shocks and surprises and everything, kind of predictable. You had the Becky and Piper match that was fun and better than I was expecting, but wasn't necessarily what we're used to seeing at one of the big four pay-per-views or whatever. Brock and Bobby was a lot of fun. The mixed tag match was a lot of fun. The men's Rumble to me is one of the most underwhelming Rumbles we've had here recently. So to me, it was very underwhelming, and it wasn't as fun or it wasn't as great as I thought it was going to be. But that being said, a bad Royal Rumble is still a fun Royal Rumble. And so this is kind of the case of I had fun watching it. I always have fun. The 10-second countdown is my favorite part. The silence before the music hits, it's still my favorite part of wrestling. It's still my favorite part of the Rumble. And I'm, even an underwhelming Rumble is still a fun Rumble.
As I get called all the time on this show, I'm a shill. I'll 100% admit it. I am. Okay. I thought it was a really good show. I did. Even though we predicted almost everything that happened, I was sports entertained tonight. I wasn't wrestling entertained. I was sports entertained. Okay. So that's my consensus on the show. I still give it a thumbs up. I mean, like you said, an average Rumble, it's still a good show because it's still one of the big four pay-per-views, and it was still really exciting. So I'm with it. I'm down with it. I think there's still the road to WrestleMania is starting to clear up a bit. It's not as exciting with all of the question marks like it was a couple weeks ago, but I still think that there's some detours we could take. We don't know who Bobby's going to face. It's going to be really interesting to see how all that works out, especially now that Big E is over on SmackDown. So it'll be interesting. So for those of you who are listening, apparently Mike said that I skipped the RK Bro double RKO spot. I did. Yeah, that was cool. Where Riddle did the springboard, and
so that was a really nice spot.
That was cool. That was very cool. Mike, I still don't like RK Bro. Anyway, so
I'm trying. I'm trying.
It's not working. That being said, if you are listening to us for the first time ever and you're tuning in and you're just now checking us out, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. Every Monday and every Wednesday, we drop brand new episodes here on the BodySlam.net YouTube channel of the PipeBomb Wrestling Podcast, the show that is for the fans, by the fans. This coming Wednesday, we'll catch you up on the aftermath of Monday Night Raw and the Royal Rumble. And AEW will preview what's coming up this Wednesday. Big championship match coming up in 2 weeks with Hangman Adam Page and Lance Archer in a Texas death match. Should be very interesting. There's going to be a lot to talk about on the AEW front as well. Don't forget, guys, on the BodySlam.net YouTube channel, there's a playlist called the PipeBomb Wrestling Podcast. All of our past episodes are there. Go check them out. It's a lot of fun. If you are an old school fan like Dad over here, there's something for you there. If you're a new school fan like Andy over here, there's something for you there. If you fall somewhere in between like Adam and I do, there's something for you on the PipeBomb Wrestling Podcast. Give us a like, give us a listen, subscribe. We appreciate it very much. And Throwback, we appreciate you, man, hopping on tonight and reviewing with us. Let's do it again sometime, man.
Hey, anytime. Open door policy of Wicked Crazy Pinfalls on Thursdays. And I'm excited for NXT this week because there's so many moving parts after this Rumble, because I'm going to say it now. I think AJ is going to go after the NXT title for Mania. I'm going to throw that and die on that hill.
Oh, AJ and Braun Breaker. Okay. I like where your head's at on that. Okay. For my dad, for Adam, for Andy, my name is Chris. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. We know we've kept you for a while tonight, but there was a lot to talk about. It is a big 4 pay-per-view. We're on the road to WrestleMania, and we're 60-something days away. I think that's what the countdown said tonight. So a lot to get to on the road to WrestleMania. Keep it right here with the PipeBomb Wrestling Podcast, and we will we'll keep you informed. We'll give you our opinions, and if you don't like it, too bad. It's our podcast. All right. Thanks so much for hanging out with us tonight. We will catch you guys down the road.